Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Normal podcast, where we highlight minority business owners and founders, and we use this platform to shed light on their entrepreneur journey. Welcome to the Beyond Normal podcast. I have a very special guest today, Darnell Thomas. He is the owner of Darnell Creates, which is a creative studio specializing in web development, design, and illustration, along with photography. I'm excited to have Darnell on the show. We go back a couple years. He's an excellent resource when it comes to all the creative needs that you would need for your business. So excited to have you on for an episode, Darnell.
I appreciate you having me, man. Appreciate it.
I want you to give folks just a little bit of background around where you're from and how your career has developed.
So I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, born and raised. Over the last, I say probably about 15 years of my life, I ventured out a lot more. So I ended up on the West Coast for a while in LA, out in Alaska for a while. Also ended up in Charlotte, spent some time, spent a couple of years down there as well. So, just in that time of it, working on different creative roles, be it like video production or web development and design. So pretty excited to have ventured out and around in all these different parts of the country.
All right, now, sorry to hear that you are a Cleveland fan, I believe, right? You're a Cleveland sports fan, so sorry to hear about that.
Oh, you get used to it after a while. It's all good, man. We're gonna be all right. We're gonna be all right.
I hear that. So, I want you to tell the folks a little bit, like you said, you have a background, 10 years experience in that graphic design, just that creative space. What sparked the idea for you to go down the path to have your own business and create Darnell Creates?
Well, I mean, to me, it makes sense after all these years. Like back in 2011 or 2010, I made a career shift. So I was working a job at the time. I was working full time. And I just kind of wanted to change. I just kind of felt like I was working just different kind of odd jobs. And, a job's a job. You got to keep food on your table, But it wasn't anything that I was passionate about, And I just felt like I was just kind of going through the motions of life. So I kind of ended up and went back to school. So I went back to school, and that's where I kind of really got into design again. As a kid, I used to draw a lot. So I used to draw and do design, cartoon characters and stuff like that. So I just thought that would be definitely a field of interest for me to go into. So when I went back to school, I really put everything I had into it, because it was all or nothing pretty much, because I was putting the money into it for schooling and financing myself and living a life that was not, it was Skid Row, like no money, nothing like that, broke college student, and this is I was 23, 24 at the time. So it was even more like broke college student, But yeah, it's just after all these experiences that I've had working in e-commerce, working for big companies, for startups, larger companies or mid-sized companies rather, it just made sense for me to kind of take a lot of what I know and my experiences and kind of put it into one, entity, which is Darnell Creates. So that's been around for about 8-9 years now. And that's kind of where I'm at now, and I'm going to continue to grow that out.
I appreciate you sharing that part of your story with folks, and you even making those decisions, like you said, going back to school, it was all or nothing. If you're willing to go through an experience like that, wear that hat, right, where you're willing to own all that comes with you making a decision, I think that's a natural trends progression, right, for you, just because, you do have those experiences to reflect on now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It makes a big difference. I mean, it's always like when you invest in yourself, if you have to invest in yourself, you have to put yourself out there. So when you do that, you have something at risk, and it's really scary and it's really uncomfortable, but the reward tends to be a lot more bigger to when you do that versus when you just when you don't do that, you start baby steps, you do small steps or whatever, gradually you get into larger steps for what you would consider a large step. someone else might consider something else. Yeah, and you just have to really put yourself out there. It's like, that's the only way to do it, you know?
Yeah, and that's been a consistent theme. I appreciate you bringing that up with the entrepreneurs, the founders that I've interviewed, like yourself. You know what? You really can't, like, there is no bad way to really spend you taking a gamble on yourself, right? There's no way when you look at kind of the ROI, the return on your investment, it's something that you own, right? You completely you completely determine what you get out of it. And so 9 times out of 10, you always have that ability to make any situation a positive for you, for yourself, for your family. It still is a big decision to go out and be a business owner, right?
Yeah, because it's a lot of things that go into it, you know, and part of what I do, I mean, service-wise, what I do is I kind of really tell people that a lot of times. I mean, there's people that they're like our chefs, or people that, you know, own a mechanic store or do trucking or something like that. And then with every industry that you do, you have to have a way to put your word out there, to put your messages out there, to tell people what you do and why you do it and why they should care, you know. And that's always my favorite conversation to have with people, is like, why should people care about what you do, you know? And that goes into the business. I mean, the business aspect of running it, because you're responsible for everything, you know, and that's overwhelming when you really sit and think about it. You know, the financial part of it, the tax part of it, you know, making sure you got the legal stuff together, you know, and then the marketing and advertising part of it. So yeah, it definitely is not for the weary. It definitely comes with a risk.
I appreciate you bringing that up, and I want to throw one curveball at you, right? You spoke a little bit around, you know, asking your customers, your clients, what does your business do? Like, how does your business add value for people, for your customers, right? You know, in terms of, we thinking right now we're in the social media age, right? When it comes to emojis and just all these things that kind of speak to people, right? When you see an image, you see a picture, you know, what's an emoji that you feel like reflects your business, or you feel like when you see that emoji, you're like, oh yeah, that's representative of what I do with my business?
Probably the art brush one, I guess, or it's like the thing you paint with. Put is it the easel? That's not the easel. It's the thing with the different colors that the painter would hold. They paint. You know what I'm saying? I forgot what it's called, and I use it too, or a variation of it. So I guess that would probably be the best one. Yeah, like, I think it's playful. I think it's colorful, and I think that represents a lot of what design and, you know, what photography is.
I like that. And so, you know, keeping us on course, you mentioned, right, you know, being a business owner is not for the weary, right? It's not something for folks who really don't want to take on that challenge, don't want to have those uncomfortable conversations. Some things that you learned throughout the process that you wish that, you know, you would have had, or some knowledge of, as you were setting up your business, and that may have, you know, helped you out with starting your business, you know, off the ground running a little bit quicker, or just putting you in a better position?
Well, I think for the business, it's kind of it's still a growing thing. You know, it's still a growing thing where I'm still learning different things. I've been researching just what to do and how to do it for a couple of years now. And it's just actually doing it now. I think the biggest thing for me career-wise has been asking for help. I think a lot of times when you feel like you really have a lot to prove, or you're not really too sure about yourself, you tend to want to just do everything yourself. And that really holds you back, because you can't do everything yourself, you know, and it's the ego thing, really. And honestly, after a while, once you let that go and you start saying, oh, you know what, I can ask this person for help, and this person will help me out, you know. And that becomes a thing where it's like, okay, I can maybe learn from this person. This person knows more about it. You know what I'm saying? Because you have to put what you think you know to the side and say, well, hey, this person knows a little bit more. They have more experience in this field. Ask some questions if they're open to it. I find more often than not, a lot of people that are really successful are open to answering questions to people, you know. And I think that once I started realizing that, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I need to continue to be a student to whatever I'm trying to get better at, you know. So it comes into asking questions and asking for help. That's been probably the biggest thing for me. In the process of getting this together, even getting the studio together, it's been asking for help, asking friends and family, just kind of bouncing stuff off of them and say, hey, what do you think about this? And you get different feedback from different people, from different experiences. And they don't even necessarily have to be a photographer or a designer. It's just, these are regular people that's, either they spend money or they have their own different experiences in life that you can definitely learn from. So that will probably be my answer right there.
Yeah, and I think that's powerful for you to have that kind of be able to reflect on your experiences and know that early on in the process, like you said, you're just, you're getting your studio up to speed and you feel like you're in a good spot, but you realize you had to rely on others. There a certain function, a certain hat within the business where, like you mentioned, you know that you have to be a student in certain areas. More so than the teacher. Like, are there certain areas of the business where you just naturally kind of say, all right, I'm going to delegate this task. I'm going to make sure I have somebody to run this part of the business while I focus on the core of the business. Is there any particular hat as you are the owner that you know that you have to delegate, just because, like you said, you can't do everything by yourself?
Right. For me, honestly, it would probably be social media. Like, I enjoy it, just in terms of just basic, just one-off interactions, just kind of just joking around, things like that. But there's a lot of opportunity and growth that has been coming in the last several years for it. There's a lot of different things, like even with like Facebook ads and Instagram ads and Twitter ads and Pinterest ads and stuff like that. There's a lot of different information that comes in because of the users that are using the platform. So one of my favorite things is actually looking at is like analytics. So like, when I always talk about people getting websites for them and stuff like that, it's like, it's important to understand where people are coming from to your site. You know what I'm saying? So who to market to, because you can't just say, hey, I market to everybody, because you don't, unless you target a Walmart, because they're more general. But it took a long time for them to get to that particular destination. One of the things would be for me is like, handing that stuff off, because honestly, truth be told, I'm more of just kind of type to be in the back room, just creating or drawing or sketching or creating a website, than I am just, having my face everywhere. You know what I'm saying? I think that's more my lane that I thrive off of, so that would be something.
Yeah, and that's cool that you mentioned that, because when I think about it, I touched on a little bit earlier just around the idea of like return on investment in yourself. And I think it's important now more than ever, right, in terms of what you can get out of a minute of your day, a second of your day, an hour of your day. When you start compounding like the amount of time we spend on things where we're not necessarily the go-to, or it's just not something that, may resonate with us, when you see the effects of you spending hours and hours and hours I myself as well on social media, that's something I struggle with. And I do have people that I go to who I know they have good Twitter fingers, right? Like they're good with being on social media, doing the right hashtag, putting the right, picture in place. And so, that's very smart of you early on to like recognize that. And I think with your business as a creative, the most valuable use of your time is creating, like you just mentioned.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's like I said, it's a place where if I was given any kind of situation I could choose, I would probably just be holed up somewhere, as I typically am, with like my iPad or my laptop working. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just my thing, so I come up for water here and there, and that's it. So yeah. But yeah, like I said, it's so much opportunity just in terms of just like what comes with marketing and social media. And that's why you got companies now that all they do is run social media for people, and it's pretty cool, because that's a big part of it. You need to be able to interact with people. But I think the biggest thing is, I don't want to spend like forever and a day on this, but I think the biggest thing is building an authentic relationship with people. I think a lot of times, I feel like I see it a lot of times, it's kind of like more pandering, if anything, than actually building relationships with people. And that takes time. That takes authenticity. That takes vulnerability. And it takes, being honest, and there are some companies that do really well at that. Like Wendy's Twitter is a thing where it's like it's so left field, but it works. Oreo's Instagram is another thing where it's a cookie. You don't think, oh, I gotta follow Oreos on Instagram, but they have it. The way things are laid out, the messaging is pretty cool. It's pretty nice. It's clean. It's aesthetically pleasing as a designer. It works. So it's a finding a voice in there to communicate to people, to build a rapport with them.
That's cool. Just like me sitting here, like you said, you just kind of at the beginning was like, hey, I don't want to spend too much time on that. But you just sharing that with me about like Wendy's or like Oreo, I can tell that you're paying attention to like the nuances and that the way that these different companies kind of interact with us. And like you said, finding a voice. Like for me, with me putting my normal hat on, like I'm like, how do you find a voice with a picture or like a logo for a company, but you like that's your bread and butter, right? That's something you want to spend your time on. And it's interesting just me hearing you talk about Oreos. Like you said, it's a cookie, but they're putting stuff out there to make me say, oh, all right, I'm about to go to the store and I'm about to buy these Oreos off of impulse a lot of times, right? Just for seeing ads.
Yeah, because I mean, and another one too is like I'm a big Sonic the Hedgehog fan. You know what I'm saying? So I grew up playing Sonic the Hedgehog. That's still by far my favorite cartoon character of all time. But their social media stuff is great. Like it's dorky to like people that get it. So it's like but it's relative to like just the different things that happen or certain things that happen that are like popular at the time. Like they have like a YouTube channel and it's like they have like a Cooking with Dr. Robotnik. And it was just like some nasty, just like an egg, a Twizzler, a shoe. Just it was stupid. It didn't make no sense, but it was just like, it pulls on some kind of humor bone, and you just say, oh, if you follow this page, you kind of have a sense of where you're going or what you're going to get from this stuff, and you like it. It works. It's a quirkiness to it, but it's not forced. It's not like it's a hey, look how funny we are. It's just it feels natural.
Yeah, like what you're speaking to, like you mentioned Sonic, we're around the same age, right? Some of those things, I don't know if it's a cycle, but I feel like some of the stuff that's retro right now is the stuff from our childhood. And like you said, not forced. All they got to do is put some of the superheroes in front of us. They put some of these things from our childhood. And it doesn't have to be forced, and they can just literally have the character from our childhood in a natural setting, and then it starts your brain going like, oh man, I remember I had that toy, like you mentioned Sonic, right? I remember I had that Sega Genesis, and I was playing that game. I played it for days straight, and would play 24 hours straight and stuff like that. So that's actually cool. When you put it that way, to see some of these brands doing that now. I think around like Disney, all the brands that they have right now, it seems like they can just pull any character out of the vault at any time and just like people go crazy for it. And it doesn't feel forced at all.
Yeah, what it is like you have all this technology nowadays. It's so popular. Like, just as a web developer, it's always cool to see interactive websites. Like KFC had one, and their marketing campaign is pretty genius. I mean, they do great with Colonel Sanders. I mean, it's KFC, but they had this website. It's not, I don't think it's up anymore, but it was all about Colonel Sanders. But on this website, it had it where it was a video game. It was like a click, like a storybook thing. It was just off the wall, but it was very interactive. It only worked on desktop computers because of the technology, which was like HTML5 canvas. But just the way that they went so far out to do this, it's compelling. It's like you gotta really love this stuff. It's for people that like quirky stuff, and we all like quirky stuff. And I think that over time, social media has made it a little bit more normal for us to share the quirky stuff that we're into. So it's like, oh, you like this goofy stuff. It's dorky. It's kind of corny, but you like it. but it works. And then also you're talking to people that are web developers that, this is what we do. We thrive on any chance to be creative. It's a different kind of creative than it is from drawing on a piece of paper. But, you get opportunity and a company said, oh, you know what, look, we're a bank, but I want you to build a racing car game for us. Makes no sense, but it connects to people and say, well, that's kind of cool that they actually do stuff aside from just banking, because banking's not like an overly exciting topic, I mean, well, to some areas that if you are in the finance industry, but the most people, this is a place that holds my money,
Mm-hmm.
And the bank I was referring to is Ally Bank. So I believe they're pretty big in Charlotte. But yeah, they have like this interactive, full-blown interactive race car game that looks like Rad Racer from NES. I don't know if you hit the Rad Racer or Ridge Racer.
I remember that.
Yeah. So it's just like that, but it's like it's got nothing to do with banking, but it's like it's cool, So it's a pretty amazing thing.
And that online component, right? Like you mentioned, so some of the companies that you mentioned there, like the online is big for them. A lot of the bigger brands right now. In terms of COVID, right, and some of the partners, some of the clients that you have, like, what is the shift for them now that COVID? It seems like this environment is forcing some things on us that we thought, may just, come and go. In terms of, hey, we'll be in our house for a month or two, and then we'll go back to normal. How has COVID, for the partners that you've dealt with, how has that impacted the way that they communicate with their customers? As they figure out how to connect with their customers in this COVID world where you got to have on gloves, you got to have hand sanitizer on. How are your partners? How are you helping your partners communicate with their customers?
Well, I think the biggest thing is we all want, at the end of the day, some normalcy, whatever that is anymore. But I think the idea that, being safe is important, obviously, and if you have, you just want to be safe, obviously, that's the main thing. But one of the things that like I do for here, for instance, is that this is a small setting. This is not a huge blown out situation or nothing like that. It's very small, and that was intentfully before even this even happened, because I just feel as if like when I'm working with somebody, it should be a one-on-one situation. It shouldn't be me, you, 400,000 people right outside the lobby and 300 people here, and I'm kind of working with you over here in this corner. I just feel like it should be a very one-on-one situation. I think a lot of companies are really realizing that bigger is not always better. I'm a minimalist at heart. So a lot of for me, I don't really ever really need a whole lot of space. I never really operated with a whole lot of space. You know what I'm saying? Like I shared a bedroom with my brother for 18 years. Shared people. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So it's like I've always worked well with just a small little corner just for me, And I think that now I always think about like these stadiums now that are just sitting there, that are just collecting dust. They can't bring in thousands of people that they were banking on. Like the NBA was just saying how they lost, $1.7 billion because of all this stuff that's happened. Because 40% of the revenue that comes into, I believe it's for the players, comes from the fans, from the arena attendance. So now you got this whole new situation where we have this humongous space. So what do we do with it? And even if they say tomorrow, I don't want to speculate or nothing like that or share misinformation or nothing like that. But hypothetically, if you have something to like a cure or something like that for this, there's still going to be people that are skeptical. They're going to be like, I'm not coming out the house. I'm gonna fall back. I'm gonna give it about 2-3 years before I go to another, like a Cavs game or to another arena or anything like that. And that's natural. You're gonna have people that are skeptic. You're gonna have people say, yeah, I'm ready to go. Let's do this, So now it's like that bigger is always better. It's not necessarily probably the biggest thing that's going right now, So a lot of people are scaling back. Like it was heartbreaking to see the IXN or amusement park have to close, but you look at that space realistically, it's like, I don't know when we're going to get back to stuff like that. So scaling back, working bootstrap, like real lean, is always a good idea. But being more impactful is always the bottom line, so.
Yeah, you touched on something there, like you said, kind of that one-on-one relationship that you want to build with your partners and ultimately their customers when they see the pieces that you put out there. I would think the tools, do the tools right now put you in the best position to do that? Like you touched on that a little bit earlier, just all the technology that we have. Do the tools enable that most of the time, or are there times where the tools, like you currently have, like the editing tools, and I know you got cameras, you got lights, you got all this stuff. Does it put you in place to do all that you can do, just you having that, you being the sole person that does a lot of this stuff in those one-on-one settings, or can it feel like it's too much at times?
No, it works for me. It works for me. Like I said, I've been doing web development. I've worked, pretty much just on my own for years, like in terms of just doing, like, if I'm working with a client or working at a job, there's not really much in terms for me being in a specific location, you know what I mean? Like, because a lot of what I can get is, if you're talking about like designing how the site's going to look, right? Like, that's something that can be shared via like a Basecamp or a Trello or something like that. You can share this information to another person digitally from like web applications. Generally, with my experiences with building websites with people or, doing design work for them, most of the time it's remote. Most of the time these are people I've never actually even met in person, but it's worked well because, I'm always transparent. I'm big on transparency. So it's just like up front, here's what we're going to do. This is what it's going to be like. This is going to be cost, blah, 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 blah. But then when we get everything squared away, I hand you off everything digitally. You have the files, you have my contact information. And then if you need me, then you reach out. In terms of just the photography portion of things, like I said, the studio is a one-on-one situation. So when you're booking, it's just going to be me and whomever else has booked at that particular time. And that's the way I like it. It just works better that way. With everything that's going on, like, I have my, taking all my precautions and everything like that for, the COVID-19 stuff. But that helps as well. So, excuse me.
No, I appreciate that. All that, all that background. I think it's cool that you put yourself in a place, like you said, you're comfortable in those situations where you're in a one-on-one situation, right? You're building that relationship. And then, like you said, remote, you've been doing that for a while now. It's been interesting seeing people who are used to the human interaction just in kind of their day-to-day, kind of having it in person. Like, I think there has been some shock to certain people's systems when it comes to, like, all right, you're only going to see these people through the camera. There ain't going to be no breaking bread. I'm in sales, right? So, for example, in the sales world, with our clients, we may go out for dinner, we may go to a bar, that kind of stuff stopped. And so people had to figure out to do some of the stuff that you're doing. How do I keep the business moving? How do I keep these relationships fresh? And so it's cool that you have that perspective right now, because I think a lot of people are going to be leaning on that mindset that you have right now. Naturally, they're going to have to make some adjustments, some big adjustments, in order to play ball moving forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is that, by no means does that mean like, human interaction is going away. Like, human interaction is still the core of what we are. We're all sociable creatures, and a lot of times, people say, oh, I'm introverted and this and that. We're all introverted to whatever situation. We're all extroverted to whatever situation as well. We're not just one thing, you know what I mean? We might lean on one versus the other. Like, I could consider myself an introvert, and people are like, oh, no, you're not an introvert. You like to be out there, but it's just like, like, I could blow either way and be okay, but I think the human interaction is really important because it helps with the relationship building. And again, like we talked about with social media, building a relationship takes effort. It takes it takes authenticity, and that part of, like you said, to the sales stuff, you're going out for drinks and talking. Like I've had it with clients before. So we sat and, we had some conversation, maybe had some lunch, met up at at a coffee shop or something, just kind of broke bread there. And that worked well, now it's, more so inclined digital, but that's fine as well. But yeah, I think a good mix always helps. But I don't know. I do think it's interesting though, because I'm so inclined to just do what I have to do. Like for websites, in instance, like if I have to build a website, if I'm coding a website, it's like, if you're watching me, it's like paint dry, the watching paint dry. It's not really engaging, so generally I'm holed off somewhere, I'm focused in, headphoned up, and I'm working,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think a good mix a lot of times helps. I think it just because we're variable creatures anyway, so yeah.
I like that. And so, you touch a lot there on the current state of your business, how you interact with your customers and your clients. That's the kind of feedback we definitely want to hear on the Beyond Normal podcast. I want to pivot a little bit in terms of the conversations. We mentioned COVID, right? What that's done for all of us. But as we look moving forward, right, the conversations, that's kind of the pandemic number 2 that, is on all of our plates right now, is just some of the social inequalities that are being highlighted. It started with George Floyd. It feels like this year, and then it's just name after name after name. How are these conversations affecting you personally and your business?
Well, I think that it's great to see conversations happening, honestly. It's been, I'm sure a lot of different people have had a lot of different experiences of color, and I've definitely had my own, it's really refreshing to see conversations come up, and a lot of the angst that's coming out of it is really captivating. I think that from a art standpoint, the photography that I've seen from some of these rallies, just like the chaos and just a lot of stuff that's happened at these events it's been very telling, and I've told people a lot of times that I've talked to about this stuff is that we definitely are living in uncharted times in terms of just with the pandemic stuff, and also with just a lot of the conversations that are coming up now. And I definitely think that it really should invoke introspection for everybody, black, white, whatever race they are, to really kind of start thinking about this stuff in a different way. I'm always an advocate that, any big thing that's happening in the world is enough for us to kind of really look at ourselves and say, okay, how was I thinking about things before this happened? How am I thinking about things while it's happening? How am I thinking about things after it's happened? No, I think that it has been great to kind of see these conversations. It's still a lot of work to do, obviously, but just definitely normalizing the idea of just having conversations and especially with the whole voting aspect, getting people out there to really pay attention to what's happening in their communities, small scale and large scale with the country. It's one of those things where you are tuned in, and I don't know if it's necessarily even just getting older and kind of really becoming more aware of where we're at in the world or our different roles. Like as a father, what are my thoughts about this? Versus me just being, a young 20-something that is not really thinking too much about anything other than the next day. It's very interesting, and seeing a lot of the artwork that's come out of this stuff. I mean, I look at it. I'm just speaking from the artistic part of things. I just think a lot of the artwork that I've seen is just it's got a voice to it, and it's really powerful. It's really powerful. It's a couple of people I follow, I've seen on Instagram that's done some really dope stuff, and I'm all for it. I mean, I think that art in itself is an expression anyway, and if you're going to express something, it might as well be from the heart, So.
No, and I appreciate that. I think it feels like to me, right? I don't typically wear the creative hat, but it feels like to me, like one of the times where, there's some, like you said, there's some great conversations being had. And I think, creatives like you who are there to document it and just put it in the right light where people can reflect on it later. It feels like this is a very important time to have creatives. I think around, my favorite artist is Jimi Hendrix, right? So I think about the 60s, right? All that stuff that was going on around civil rights, people having access. I think the conversation now has similarities in terms of the word I like to use is parity, opportunity parity, right? That's what we're looking for everyone, whether it be with the police force, whether it be with career, whether it be with how much I'm paid. I just want to know that I have parity, I have opportunity parity with someone who sits next to me who may not look exactly like me, but I want to know that there's a level playing field and the best candidate, the best person will ultimately get that role or, get that opportunity. And it feels like to me, I mentioned Jimi Hendrix, right? It feels like from a creative perspective, this will be a great time to be creative. It sounds kind of weird, but you kind of alluded to that where it's kind of refreshing was what the word that you used earlier, to see the conversations being had. And then it's cool that you get to sit there and actually make sure that it's documented the right way.
Yeah, I mean, because it's an expression, man. It's unapologetic. Like, just just a lot of the stuff that you've seen, like just when everything that was like some of the stuff, even chaos that was here in Cleveland. Afterwards, you've seen like on the boarded up glass windows and stuff like that. You've seen just like this artwork that people have done. Like, it's like amazing that even in the midst of so much chaos, people find a way to be creative. And I think that is the most. That's what speaks most to me, is that aspect of things. People that are compelled to write music to this stuff, to paint a picture, to make it like mosaics, and I've seen like quilts and stuff like that just have really been very captivating in an emotional standpoint, and I think that's great, because like you said, and like I was saying earlier, I mean, this is stuff that you'll see 30, 40 years from now. You see a lot of movies coming out of this stuff, a lot of documentaries.
Yeah.
And then people generations to come, like how we learned about, civil rights movements and seeing those very powerful pictures of, like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, just, and a lot of others. I mean, we can go on for days with that conversation, but to really see a lot of these iconic images. And now we have our own iconic images, in our generation. It really says a lot. But like I said, the biggest thing I would say from all of this stuff is that hopefully it invokes introspection for everybody, because the charity, I always say like this, charity starts at home, and if you are looking introspectively into yourself, your body's your house, and if you're really looking at that, you're making the changes that you need to internally, then the external changes that you can make are much more powerful. You know what I mean? And that's where I think that we see a lot of this changes happening from these conversations that are being had. So,
I like that. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you, setting that up with some of the conversations that I've been having, just giving your perspective there. So in closing, what's next for Darnell Creates? Like, what do you see coming up? Obviously, everyone's trying to finish out 2020 strong, but then, what do you see coming up 2021 and beyond?
Continuing to grow, man. Continuing to grow. I hope that in the near future, if things get stable or normal, whatever that is again, that we can continue to have like kind of like medium-sized gatherings. I miss going to art shows, trade shows, things like that. You meet people, you see cool stuff, you have great conversations there. I do miss those things because I've my experiences going to them in the last couple of years have been pretty rewarding. And I definitely see that for things that I would like to do for Darnell Creates and for the studio, and expanding, just continue to expand, man, continue to create. Like, that's a really big thing for me. I mean, that's my life, that's where I've weaved in and out of that for years. And in the last 12 years of my life has been very much committed to it. So continue to go onward, man. I enjoy what I do. I love what I do. And I'm very fortunate to have found something that I willingly get up to every day to like, okay, what's next? You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm gonna try to keep on with that same energy, man.
Definitely. I'm excited to see how you progress on that journey yourself. Let everybody know how they can reach out, stay connected with Darnell Creates and all the things that you have going on.
Well, darnellcreates.com, the website, facebook.com/Darnell Creates, instagram.com/Darnell Creates, LinkedIn /company/Darnell Creates. No Twitter. There is a Twitter, but I don't use it. But yeah, just stay in tune with social media and on the website. There's always things changing, and as the climate changes with everything that's going on, I'll probably have some more and more updates. So
appreciate that. So everybody just remember, everywhere Darnell Creates, he got it on.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's straightforward. No like 0914 or the real Darnell Creates. It's Darnell Creates.
Yeah, you got lucky with that, Darnell.
Well, you know what it was, man? When I was in school, we had to register a website so that we could put all of our homework on there. And I was trying to think of something because my name itself is not really, I don't know. It's just a regular name, man. It's nothing cool. You can't call me D-Man or D-Nail. It don't sound right to me. So Darnell is just like Darnell. And it's like, well, I can't just use my whole name because that's boring. So Creates became the monkey, or then that was 2011. So I've been rolling with it since. So
got a ring to me.
Yeah, all right.
Ring to me. I like it. All right. Again, I just want to say thanks for hopping on for an episode, Darnell.
No doubt, man. Absolutely.
This will be live on social media, and we'll get this on all streaming platforms as well. Again, I appreciate you. I'm excited to see as you build out Darnell Creates your studio. You got that space up and running. I know you're going to do great things there. And to the listeners, thanks for tuning into the Beyond Normal podcast.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Normal podcast. We can be streamed across all major streaming platforms in addition to YouTube. Come back again.